Next, let's look at the if, else, if, and else structure. We can nest several levels of if and else statements. However, it might be difficult to determine which logical expressions must be true or false in order to execute each set of statements. So we can use the else if function, which allow us to check multiple criteria while keeping the code easy to read. So let's consider the following lines of code. Okay, this is actually the syntax for if, else if, and finally else structure. So let's look at this flowchart. This is the flowchart for an else if structure. So the diamond box here show you that we have 4 different comparisons that MATLAB needs to evaluate. So let's say we are coming from the start here. So if the logical expression 1 is true, MATLAB will execute statement number 1. If the results for the logical expression 1 is false, okay, it will enter through the logical expression 2. Okay, so all these 1, 2, 3, 4 logical expressions is different condition, has different conditions. So if it is false, it will check whether the results of logical expression 2 is true or false. If the results is true, it will execute statement 2. If it is still false, it will be evaluated against the logical expression 3. And once again, if it is true, it will execute statement 3. But if it is false, it will be evaluated against the logical expression 4. If it is true, MATLAB will execute the statement number 4. Okay, and finally, this is if. So we start with if. So statement 1 true. For the false is else if here. So we have 1, 2, 3 else if, else if, else if, else if. Then finally, if the results for the comparison for all the 4 logical expression is false. Okay, so the last one, the false comparison, okay, is under the else clause here. So it will execute statement number 5 and then finally exit the program. Let's look at the example for the if, else if, and else structure. So we are going to write a program to determine if an applicant is eligible to drive based on the applicant's age. So refer to this flowchart here. We have 3 different categories. Okay, first we will check either the applicant's age is below than 16. If it is below than 16, MATLAB will display this message. Sorry, you'll have to wait. Next, check. This is the second criteria. Check if the applicant's age is less than 18. If it is true, MATLAB will display the message you may have a youth license. And then for the third criteria, check if the applicant's age is below than 70. So if it is true, display the message you may have a standard license. But if the the applicant's age is greater than 70, MATLAB will display the message drivers over 70 require a special license, and finally quit the program. We will use input command to get the age input. and then we will type the if-else-if-else. So we have the 1, 2, 3, three criteria, okay, below 16, below 18, and below 70. So if age is below than 16, display, you'll have to wait. Now let's try to run the code with this matrix input. So change, age is 15, 17, 25, 55, and 75. So if your age input is a matrix, okay, you must remember that the comparison must be true for every element inside the matrix. So when we are using the age matrix of 15, 17, 25, 55, and 75, MATLAB will evaluate each element. Okay, so for the first comparison, if age below than 16 is false, okay, so it will evaluate each elements against all the comparisons that we put here. So for the first comparison, which is age is below than 16, it is false for the only true for the first elements. Okay, so the results for the first comparison is false. How about the second comparison? Is all the age elements here is less than 18? Okay, no, because only 2 are true. How about less than 70? 4 elements is true, but 1 is false. So that's why when you run your code using the age matrix input, it will only display the else portion. So it means that not all are true for every element in the array. There is one common mistake that beginners, okay, like you guys usually make when using if statements. Okay, it is actually you tend to over specify the criteria. So in our previous example, it is enough to state that age is below than 18. Here it is enough for us to state that age is below than 18 in the in the second if clause, okay, because age cannot be less than 16 and still reach this statement. Okay, so you do not have to specify. So what I mean is you don't have to specify the second if clause like this: age below than 18 and age greater than 16. Okay, so if age is greater than 16, it is enough to use age less than 18. So what happen if you over specify the criteria is you might risk defining a correct calculation part for which there is no correct answer. Okay, so for example, if you use this code, okay, let's try this code on our MATLAB. So if we try to run this code and enter age 16, okay, look at the command window, there is nothing none of the error message will be displayed because there is no correct choice for age 16. Okay, so age 16 should be that you may have youth license, but here dia macam it somehow clash. Okay, MATLAB couldn't find the correct part to, it cannot decide, okay, which part that it should take. Okay, so there is no correct choice for age 16 and 18 and also 70. Okay, so always remember to not over specify the criteria inside the if statements. Okay, so for general rule, if structures work well with for scalars, but for vectors or arrays, you can use a find function or combine the if structures with a repetition structure. So repetition structure will be covered in the next chapter. Okay, let's look at another example. So in this example, we are going to create a function. Okay, listen, this is a function, not a program, to determine test grade based on the score and assuming a single input into the function. So your function would take up score from 0 to 100 and then produce the letter grade as output. So whenever you want to solve a problem, what you have to do is first state the problem. So in this example, we want to determine the grade earned on a test, and then second step is describe the input and output. So input given is the single score, not an array, and then output that we want MATLAB or we want the function to produce is the letter grade. Okay, letter grade from A to E. And then third step is you should develop your hand example. I know you might have the tendency to go straight directly to your MATLAB and try to write up your own code, but it would be best if you develop the hand solution first. Okay, like this, for example, you have to determine the relational operator that you are going to use. Okay, because you have to decide. Okay, so score A would be grade A would be for score from 90 to 100. So 80 to 90. So how do you want to write? How do you want to write 80 to 90? Is it less than or equal to? So you have to decide. So here is how you decide. Okay, the relational operator that you need to create the criteria, and then you can start by draft this flowchart. So start grade X ni is the input of score grade. Okay, so if X is greater than or equal to 90, it will produce result A. This is for true comparison. Okay, and if the results for the comparison is false, it will move to the next comparison. Okay, so B is for X greater than or equal to 80, C is for X greater than or equal to 70, and D is for X greater than or equal to 60. And finally, the else portion is for when all the results of the comparisons from this 1, 2, 3, 4 comparisons is false. So it will produce letter grade E. Okay, so this is what the MATLAB code looks like. So we can type it in our MATLAB. Okay, remember that it is a function. It is a function. So it will produce results, and this is the function name, and this is input. Input is a single scalar. Okay, so this input requires a scalar input. So if x is greater than or equal to 90, it will produce A, B, C, D, and E. So you can try to use this function. So first you have to save this function first. Okay, then how to execute the function? Just type the function name. In this case, the name of the function is grade, and then we will try to enter score for each of the letter grade. So let's try with grade A first, and then a B, C, D, and finally E. Okay, but there is one problem with this code. Okay, although it looks like the function seems to work properly, it will return grades for values over than 100 and less than 0. So for example, grade 0, okay, E, but grade negative 10 is also E. How about grade 150? It's also A. So we want to go back and modify this code. So we want to insert another set of if-else inside this if-else-if-else statement, so that we can confine the value of x between 0 to 100. So we just type if x greater than or equal to 0 and x less than or equal to 100. Alright, and then we also include another error message, okay, for when a user enter score out of the range between 0 to 100. Okay, so this is how the final code looks like. So let's save it again and try it out. So when grade score for 150, illegal input. How about negative? Illegal input. How about 0? E 50 E. So you should try it for each category that you set the comparison. Okay.